Good morning. My name is Masahiro of the University of Tokyo, and also I'm heading a think tank that focuses on Northeast Asia. Today, I want to talk about ASEAN rising opportunities and challenges. As has been said, ASEAN has so many good attributes. Macroeconomic fundamentals are good. Natural resources are abundant. And population is growing, young. The middle class is expanding, and the market potential is very high. And ASEAN countries have been accepting a lot of foreign direct investment, and ASEAN is in the middle of regional supply chains that have been formed by multinational companies coming from Korea, Japan, the US, and Europe. And ASEAN is less vulnerable to the trade policy, inward-looking trade policy undertaken by the US Trump administration. And the US has, ASEAN has the ability to manage its diversity. ASEAN is a very diverse region, and ASEAN has been advancing regional integration. And also, ASEAN is located in a strategically excellent location connecting the Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. And also, ASEAN has an excellent convening power, inviting all the countries interested in Asia to get together, including China, Japan, Korea, of course, through ASEAN +3, and India, Australia, New Zealand, so ASEAN +6, and the East Asia Summit, further including the US and Russia. And also, even North Korea is invited to the ASEAN Regional Forum. So ASEAN has a very large economy. If you take a look at GDP globally, ASEAN is number 5 if you include the European Union as a unity. In Asia, ASEAN is the 3rd largest economy after China and Japan. And in terms of population, ASEAN has a number 3 economy, and even bigger than the European Union. So after China and India, ASEAN has more than 640 million people. And ASEAN has been growing fast, although the red color is China. China just shot up, and no other country could follow China in terms of GDP. But ASEAN, I'm not sure if I can successfully show. ASEAN's GDP has been about the same as Korea's up until the mid-2000s. And then ASEAN and also India, in terms of GDP, took off relative to Korea. The growth rate of ASEAN and India has been much faster than Korea's growth rate and Japan's growth rate. Sorry? Hmm? Yeah, I think so. Thank you. And ASEAN's GDP, population, and per capita GDP vary across ASEAN countries. ASEAN is a very diverse region. The largest economy in terms of GDP and population is clearly Indonesia. And the smallest economy, like Brunei, with a population of just 0.4 million people. And in terms of per capita GDP, the richest country is Singapore, and with 64,000 US dollars. And the poorest country, Cambodia. Now, when you take a look at per capita GDP, there is a wide variation. This is an opportunity, but at the same time, this is a challenge. It's an opportunity because there are many countries whose per capita incomes are very low, and they are bound to rise. So there are opportunities, but at the same time, this gap across countries could pose a challenge. Now, when we take a look at various indicators for ASEAN countries, like the World Bank's Doing Business indicator and other indicators, we see that there are a lot of challenges. I have 3 slides that show greater diversity across countries in terms of doing business, governance indicators, and competitiveness. Perhaps what I should do is to show you this governance indicator. This is the World Economic Forum's global competitiveness scores and ranking. You can see countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, the so-called CLMV countries, have many issues to be addressed, including institutions, infrastructure, health, skills, financial market, business dynamism, innovation capacity, and so forth. So across countries, no matter which indicators we take a look at, countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar would face tremendous challenges, whereas countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand have been doing relatively well. So this combination of diversity, as I said, is both strength but a challenge. Now, ASEAN provides a lot of opportunities for Asian neighbors like Korea, Japan, China. The ASEAN can serve as a production base for foreign firms, as a supplier of natural resources, and as a growing consumer market for partner economies. And ASEAN formed ASEAN Economic Community in 2015 and has been making progress in terms of ASEAN regional economic integration. Neighboring countries in Asia have various approaches towards ASEAN. China's Belt and Road Initiative does include ASEAN, and Japan's approach which has been also adopted by the United States, is the free and open Indo-Pacific vision, which attempts to connect the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And also Korea, the famous the New Southern Policy, and India, India's Act East Policy does take a look at the ASEAN. So many countries are looking at ASEAN. And ASEAN Economic Community has various pillars. Basically, it attempts to create a single market and to create an equitable region, and a region, ASEAN, that is connected to the global market. Now, when we take a look at trade, ASEAN has diverse trade relationships with many countries. The most important trading partner for ASEAN is ASEAN itself. The top graph, which it may be hard to see people, but ASEAN trades with ASEAN itself. And ASEAN's trade with the US, Europe, and Japan used to be very high, but ASEAN's trade share with these countries, these regions, has declined over time, but China's share has been rising on both export side and import side. Korea's share has been relatively stable and up. Now, this is Japan. When you take a look at Korea, I'm sure many people here know about this. Korea's trade dependence on China has been rising. And now Korea's export depends highly on China. 25% of Korean export would go to China, and 20% of Korean import is from China. In a sense, Korea may be too dependent on China economically, and perhaps there is a need to diversify a trade relationship. And ASEAN, Korea's trade relationship with ASEAN has been rising, but can rise furthermore. And foreign direct investment. Now, from the point of view of ASEAN, ASEAN has been absorbing a lot of foreign direct investment. The largest partner is the European Union, and then United States. And ASEAN itself also invests in the rest of ASEAN. And Japan has been a very important foreign direct investment partner. And then Cayman Islands, Hong Kong, China, Korea. Korea's foreign direct investment in ASEAN has been growing. Now, so when we take a look at foreign direct investment by Japan and Korea, I think some interesting observation can be made. I think looking at Japan would be useful for Korea, because Japan has been investing heavily and strengthening relationships with ASEAN. Now, in the case of Japan, Japan invests heavily in the US, and then UK, China. Japanese foreign direct investment goes to China, but about 8%, only 8% of Japan's foreign direct investment goes to China, whereas Korea, about more than 20% of Korean foreign direct investment would go to China. The US, about the same, more than 20%. So again, Korea is investing a lot in China, which is not bad, but perhaps there is room for Korea again to further diversify its foreign direct investment relationship to many other countries, particularly ASEAN countries. Now, in the case of Japan, Thailand, Singapore, and Indonesia are major ASEAN countries where Japan invests. In the case of Korea, Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia are the major destination countries for investment. Now, when we take a look at the individual countries, blue is Japan's investment, and orange color is Korea's investment. Japan invests a lot in Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Korea invests most in Vietnam and Singapore, and Indonesia, and Malaysia. So the amount of investment, this is a foreign direct investment stock in terms of stock. The amount of investment in Vietnam is about the same for Japan and Korea, which shows Korea's real strength in Vietnam. And this investment strength could be expanded to other ASEAN countries. Okay, so I want to conclude by saying that ASEAN faces a lot of challenges. There are many challenges. The ASEAN Economic Community was set up, but still it's incomplete, it's in progress. And there are large development gaps among ASEAN countries and also within each country. And ASEAN is not quite a single country. Taxes are different, laws, regulations, of course, currencies are different. So a lot of harmonization is needed on the part of ASEAN. And ASEAN is vulnerable to external shocks because ASEAN is very open. And ASEAN's internal cohesion and also ASEAN's centrality are under threat because of the rise of China and competing initiatives coming from China, Japan, US, and also the US-China trade conflict. All of these are posing ASEAN in terms of challenges. And the ASEAN has not been able to collectively manage some key issues like climate change, energy security, disaster management. And so these are the challenges. And I argue that countries like Korea, Japan, China can support ASEAN in tackling these challenges. I'm not going to go over individual countries' economic challenges, but countries face challenges. So ASEAN's ability to maintain peace and prosperity lies in the ability to narrow internal gaps, particularly Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, to harmonize various standards and regulations and achieve internal unity, coherence, and centrality. So it's in the interest of all countries neighboring countries like China, Korea, Japan to support ASEAN in its effort to integrate further and to create an internally coherent region and externally open ASEAN. So by doing so, these neighboring countries can really benefit from greater links with ASEAN. So currently, the ASEAN plus 6 countries are negotiating RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. It's very important to make progress on this, particularly given the inward-looking America First trading policy undertaken by the US Trump administration. So there are tremendous benefits from RCEP. Thank you very much